당가도 집은딩 가도 이마 집은딩 가다. 집은딩 가도 선바장 선바디 집에서 들어도 세와 타바드빌 나지라 시대라 봐봐. 타바드빌 나지라 시대라 봐봐. 라텐 쳐다비 코아도 봐. 나지다비 코아도 봐. 다 나지다비 코아도 봐. 어떤 말이야? What Khensur.
Okay, so once again.
Okay. And Jibi in Nabajo, that's the Tabaji, the Edmund Juru, Tasa to Tishulma, College and Runamara.
Okay.
The Jibundin Gilan, Rangala Chinas, Rasmus
269?
The Jibundin Gilan, Rangala Chinas, Ulia, Tinson, Juba, Juba Jibat Lua.
Come here. 269.
Ole son tu ni jebat ndo jebat. Der jibandi kilara ngala chinas.
Ale Jibudin Kona Lana. Okay. Okay, so once again we're looking at so we're if everybody wants to turn to page 342 in English, that's where we're going to be. So once again, Rinpoche is teaching Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Specifically, we're in the section on training the mind, the stages of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So when we look at the outline of that specific section, we'll find there are 4 categories. The first category is the mental training. The second category is the measure of the determination to be free. The third category is dispelling misconceptions. And then the fourth category is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So when we look, we've gone through all of the categories in that section, and we're in the fourth category currently. And in that fourth category, when we look at that outline, there are 2 categories, major headings. The kind of basis needed to halt cyclic existence, or the kind of life through which you halt cyclic existence. And then the second category is the path needed to undertake in order to halt cyclic existence. So the path that one engages in order to achieve the state of liberation. So we're dealing with path at this point. Again, Rinpoche said to turn to page 242, where it says, if I were explaining here the path of persons of medium capacity.
What didn't do the matter? That the Jibunti Gilan or Latinas, Jibunti, Time belong, Dujate, Time along Tibaina, and then Habasun La, Chilo Jiba Gunas, Habasun Jiba, Habasun Jiba Shegures, Sheguna. Temaris, the Jibandina Tumulan China, Tijele Tibon Chibares, there may be Shirol Hatun, Saint Labane, and Robert Shene Chilune, Chibichimicos, Jebran, that doesn't let Matusa.
That's it.
Tashinet Hatun into what the Chibichimicos Jibun, the Jibushidas Mes.
That's it.
That's all I'm Mojo. Then I tell them about Sujin La Hotu, Nudish Jobasha was Sujin La Hotu, Dudich Song, yes. What about Jijujana?
That's it. Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapa writes, if I were explaining here the path of persons of medium capacity alone, I would have given to give a lengthy explanation of the 3 trainings. However, since this is not the case, I will explain the trainings in wisdom and in mind in the section on persons of great capacity, and will not elaborate at this point. Thus, I will briefly discuss the training in ethical discipline here. So what Lama Tsongkhapa is stating is that if he were to be teaching, if this text were only on the lesser vehicle teachings or on the Hinayana teachings, and he stopped at the section on medium capacity, then it would be necessary to engage in a lengthy explanation of the three highest higher trainings and go over it in great detail. But because this is a text that includes all the stages of the path, and this section is called the stages in common with beings of medium capacity, it's called common because there are shared practices that are indispensable and are necessary for progressing no matter what scope or capacity one is practicing in. So the three highest higher trainings are not only necessary in the medium scope, but also in the grade scope. So Lama Tsongkhapa is choosing to give the lengthy explanation of these three highest higher trainings when he gets to the section on the great vehicle, on the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. But he states that although he will explain the insight and meditative serenity or wisdom and meditation or single-pointed concentration, I'm sorry. So, in the later on in the text in the Great Vehicle section, Lama Tsongkhapa is going to give a lengthy explanation of concentration and wisdom, which are meditative serenity and insight, or that union of calm abiding and special insight is discussed. But at this point, Lama Tsongkhapa is going to give a brief explanation of the highest higher training in ethics. That is everything. Dixon.
Thomas. That shooting some parent Thomas Name to Leon Tella Thomas shooting Japan out to Sana Hitabane, Joshua Shadis, shooting Songina, and the pen about the Latam May Tenzan Tabatuya, Sanji Gobuntualas with pen about the Mosal Tambayina, and the sensual appearance, Pure Shade. Nyangalan de Chamberlain doing Jerwa, Nyangalan de Chamberlain, shooting a gay chutanji, think is was. Shooting the Gichu Tanji Kinda numbers, shooting Latin what the Gichu and they would and Rogures, take it so. Shinla Subi Zawa, Sayimba Tara, Zawa was, and then Shinla Suba, Zawa the Sayimba Najin, shooting the Gichu Tanji Zawa is. Toba Tumba Tanji, Toma, Roa Tara, Gichu Tanji, what the Toma. Tomando was shooting Tomaje, then the Chanel had on to young Gujerwa. Tomao Jaji, Jasen Dimatar, Chutanji, Jasenos, Lion by Jaji, Jasen, Diamando. Then now she's shooting to what the Tibasong Chutanji, Jasen Damatres, Jaseno, Deba Tanji Dang, Songi, Lanchoba was shooting Latin. Deba Tatugre, Nasung Lang Katugres, Nasung Lang Jobos, Debi Netaji Penji, Dombotabures, Debi Ne se Penji Dombotabo, Sibi Lanyangai, Jason Sos, Sibi Lanyanga, and Nasu Sacha and Sacha Dombataban in Sato Google what the teacher Ramatres, Jason Sos, Tanyamobi Dungeon between Cha, Numobi Dungeon between Cha no, Numobi to Duduba say Ringas was, then Dibi Chuli do Samba. She dansa. What about Jeju Shana?
Okay. And it goes on to read, in the beginning, reflect repeatedly on the benefits of ethical discipline and develop enthusiasm for it from the depths of your heart. And then there's a quote from the great Final Nirvana Sutra from the Kangjur. So if we think about the drawbacks of engaging in the opposite of ethical discipline, and we think over and over of the benefits of engaging in ethical discipline, such as having rebirth in the higher realms, rebirth as a god, as a human, having various types of happiness. When we think about this over and over again, and think about the opposite, a state of unhappiness caused by the opposite of ethical discipline, then we will want, because of the results, to engage in ethical discipline. So when we think about this and familiarize ourselves over and over again with this concept, then it becomes part of our motivation, because we are encouraged by the results that we've read about and familiarized ourselves with. And then we have the quote from the Final Nirvana Sutra: ethical discipline is the ladder to all virtues. So Rinpoche went through line by line, so I'll just do it first. Ethical discipline is the ladder to all virtues. So it's like a set of stairs that at the top is every type of virtue conceivable. So it is what one has to climb in order to get to any virtue. So it is their foundation, just as the earth is the foundation for all plants and the like. So just as plants and trees grow out of the earth, likewise all other virtues grow from ethical discipline. Just as a master trader goes first among all traders, ethical discipline goes first among all virtues. So ethical discipline is the root of all virtue. Like the hoisted banner of Indra, ethical discipline is the banner of all the teachings. So if there was a flag that flew and represented Indra, then we could say that ethical discipline is that flag that represents all of the teachings. It cuts down all the sins and eliminates the paths to the miserable realm. So ethical discipline allows us to abandon our misdeeds and allows us to not have to go to the lower realms of cyclic existence. It stops those pathways. Since it cures all the illness of the sins, it's like a medicinal plant. So here, misdeeds are being compared to a disease, and the ethical discipline compared to the medicine, a plant that you make medicine from to cure that disease. Ethical discipline is the stock of provisions for the terrible road of cyclic existence. So if you were to go on a very long journey and it was kind of bad conditions, you would have to make sure that you had plenty of food and plenty of drink. So ethical discipline is what you need to always carry with you when you're trying to traverse the horrific experiences while you are traversing the pathways of cyclic existence. It is the weapon that destroys the afflictions, the enemies. So the true enemy is the afflictions, and ethical discipline is like a weapon that overcomes them. It is the spell destroying the poisonous snakes of the afflictions. It is the bridge over the waters, the bridge to cross over the waters of sin. Dixon. Now we have a quote from Nagarjuna's letter to a friend.
Drogi inanda salden degro de najin ne kasuru sujite ne yeden taji geden res sujin la ne yeden tu jegdes tin judo mu sajin do yeden kuji shene de la don la sube yeden kuji jeden la ba son she dans ça bonjour que je vais juler dans tantra cheta ludu tanje salane tene jume jewa tar deji chuti tene chukachu hinji chule pene nabaje she somba tar samo sa wo deba dimba ta tene kazugure ta bonang shubi judele Teta Ludu Tanjin de la Subu Ludu Sala Tene Jumen Chegarota, Jota, example, but the Jindu, Sujin Latene, Sheneta Hatun Lasu, Kabi Chu, and Heji Chu Lambin, Nabaje, Shezon Batar Samos, Sujin Sun Pen, about the Imbade.
So the next quote again from Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, ethical discipline. The protector Nagarjuna as well says, ethical discipline, like the ground supporting, I'm just going to change it now, like the ground supporting those staying and those going in the world, is said to be the foundation of all good qualities. So if anyone, so when those who are going somewhere require a ground to support that activity of going. Those who are staying somewhere or abiding require a ground in order to abide. They need something to abide on. So whether one is going or staying, it's necessary to have the ground as a foundation for that going or staying. So likewise, ethical discipline is said to be the foundation for every single excellent quality that arises. So no matter what excellent quality it is, its foundation is ethical discipline. And then we have a quote from the Tantra requested by Sabahu. Again, a pronouncement of Lord Buddha in the Tantric section. It says, just as every harvest grows without fault in dependence on the earth, so too do the highest virtues depend on ethical discipline and grow by being moistened with the water of compassion. When we just going back, I'm sorry, to Nagarjuna's quote, it says the foundation of all good qualities. So ethical discipline then becomes the foundation for the other two highest higher trainings. So when we look to gain the union of calm abiding and special insight, we need that ethical discipline as the foundation because it's an excellent quality. So I noticed, I wrote that down here and missed it. So again, the Tantra requested by Sabahu speaks of the need for the earth in order for a seed to be planted and then grow into a sprout. So every harvest, whether it's rice, no matter what it is, requires the earth to grow out of it. And likewise, the highest virtues, so this is speaking in Tantra, this is a Tantric text, so those highest virtues in the Tantric teachings require as their foundation this highest higher training in ethics. And then it says, and grow by being moistened with the water of compassion. So these highest virtues have as their foundation ethical discipline. And then these highest virtues require this moistening of the water of compassion. Khensur Rinpoche. So now we get into the downfalls or consequences of not engaging in ethical behavior.
Sudin Kelang and Masona, Yamishin to Chet, Sudin Kelang and the Masomba in the Yamishin to Chebere, Gulula Rod Jebindo, Gulumpai Sudan Dore, Gulula Rod Jebindole, Lali Sudin the Water, Lali Sudin Dungain, Sudin Damba the Water, Sudin Cheva Dungan She Laba, Kelang but the parent on Yaminiki Susundoa, Sonso, teacher, Yamin Danjan. Leba Sane, Labala Rado, Kubra Shawos, Tak Tudin was the kill on the Masuna Yamicha, but the Gunula Radi Bindule, Lali Tudin Duates, Tudin Kilan, Tudin Suna, Duate, Dendul Hatami, Tazan to Tabata Taji Chambatuba, on Tubala Subi, Dawayung Grace, Lali Tudin Dungayes, Tudin Kilan the Masuna, what the Dungayung Grace, Nasun Chivala Suba. Sudin Deba Dawate, Tudin Chiva Dungan Loshi, and Laba Kilambate, and Tudin Kilan Pendan, Yami Niki Susundu Sunsosa, Sudin Kilan Suna Pen Yuare, Masuna Yami Sun Yuares, Sunsu Tisher, Yami Najan, Lebra Sala, Labala, Radu Kuba Shavos, what about that? Masumi Yemi the Batinzare.
That's it. So now we get into the drawbacks. You should reflect on the benefits of keeping ethical discipline in accordance with the above cited passages. There are very grave consequences for you if you undertake an ethical discipline and then fail to keep it. The Sutra of Beloved Monks says that once you undertake a training, it will proceed in either an advantageous or disadvantageous direction. So this sutra, from those pronouncements of Lord Buddha, is a text written to the fully ordained monks. So we find this quote, "The ethical discipline of some leads to pleasure, so the ethical discipline of others leads to pain. Those who possess ethical discipline are happy, whereas those who break ethical discipline suffer." So the meaning of this is that ethical discipline, by engaging in ethical behavior, one has happiness, one has rebirth in the higher realms, gods, humans, and so forth. So the result of this virtue is happiness. But others who take on this discipline but don't keep it, and engage in the misdeeds, which are the misdeeds of breaking one's commitments, then this leads to a state of suffering, because non-virtue leads to suffering. So happiness is caused by virtue, ethical discipline is virtuous, so those who possess ethical discipline are happy. Those who break ethical discipline suffer. So those who break their vows, who have this ethical discipline they've taken on, are led to suffering because non-virtue, which the breaking of ethical discipline is, leads to suffering. Geshe Rinpoche.
This one, what they that's really soon, Maso Benjamin,
Less so.
that's soon about Jetal Hobbies, shooting like Jetal Hobbies. Then Manjaj was such a J.
That's good. Therefore, you should also think about the drawbacks of not keeping to ethical discipline and thereby generate great respect for the training. And now we get into this next section, and Jayan Sheba states that there are 8 categories. Okay, Gongyal Mepachi.
One judge within the massage J.
Lobsang.
That jig Jetal Hobbies, so what in the ma Saji jig and what the tomb in the lay on the tombo. Tombo to what the Meshiba Tuanju go, Palme Batuanju go, Yamu Tuanju go. On what then Jit tombe do
so.
Cheta lobby to Tuanju Jugeles, Tuanju Jugel tombe there, and Meshibi Nebo, Meshiba Tuanju Gores, and Tuanju Yodam, Neba Yungu, Machina, and what they could Neba the Leon Rota, Luigi Neba, Nagi Neba, Neba the Lega Rota. Meshiba Tuanju Gores, Meshiba Tuanju going to the Meshibi neighbor Karasana, Labana Lone, Shibar Shavos, what the Taba Dread the Velo, the Taba Dread Roll Never Najin, and Labana and Meshibi Lotele, Labana Shiba Tege, Meshibi Lotel Nunes, Taba Dream Miami. She will look at Taba Drenzi Lul Nabanaji, what the Kangal Kagundo da. Meshibi Nebu Labana on Yen Shiba Shaws, Laban and Yen Shiba Ina, Meshiba Nurgo, the near antidote. Taba Dream Maiba, she will look at Drenzi Lul Nabanaji. Taba Meba Tuanju, Bameba Tuanju Goodest. And the Shigu Yuna Kanuma Jeba Ina, and then Neba Yungurota. Neba Mebatuan go, Bamebatuan go, D. Nebate, Landu Jinena, Landu Jimina, Majibi Tambatans, the Lanja, the Ponja, the Majibi Tamba Gures, Tambatan, Cheto, Gusula, Susu Jins, Ludan, Natal, Neba Yungu. And the Susutaji Gores Lene Kanla Jubashibi, Shijin dance, Lene Kanla Jubashibi, Shijin dance, Shijin Sita, Neba Yungu to Tadigan, Shijin Logombre Dagan Chujo on the Shene, Nebalan Jeba Mosa Shibas, or Nathan Jena Jigamaria, Nebal Jeba in Mosa Shibaris, Natus Jena Chutan Genegre, Jigamarisana, or the Mosa Shibas, Tange, Tus Jena Jing Alduja Logarian Zebaina, and the Tioba, Jejim had one Hane, and Zimba and the Tia Danza. 年岁及南米拉几年，把空把苏拉老婆说的不对，把没被东安年不等么人多，呀，我自己就想呢。
Okay. So Nyepo Ni Lapsang. Okay. So there are 4 causes, so this will be one of the first category, and Jayan Sheva states that there are 8, so this will be in the first category. There are 4 causes of an infraction: not knowing the precept, carelessness, disrespect, and various afflictions. As a remedy for not knowing the precept, listen to and understand the precept. So when we look at the idea of a mind which doesn't know something, or is in a state of unknowing, the way that it knows something is by learning it, and then the state of unknowing changes to a state of knowing. Likewise, just like the example again, where you think that in a dark room a rope is a snake, and at that point you don't know what the rope is because you believe it's something it's not. And then by understanding what it is, by seeing that it's a rope and that it's not a snake, then you unmistakably know what it is, and then that state of this mistaken state of unknowing in relation to the rope is gone. So now you're in a state of knowing what that is. You know it's a rope. Likewise, when you know what the precepts are, then that remedies not knowing them. So you have to learn the precepts, and then that remedies that. So it says, as a remedy for not knowing the precepts, listen to and understand the precepts. As a remedy for carelessness, train an attitude such as mindfulness, which does not forget which ends to adopt and which to cast aside. So what one should do with his or her body, speech, and mind, what one should not do with his or her body, speech, and mind. So when one is mindful, one is always paying attention to these things. And one knows what they are because of knowing the precepts. So they're in this order of knowing the precepts, and then we go to carelessness and so forth. Let's see. And understands, okay, let me just go back. Which immediately examines the 3 doors of body, speech, and mind, and understands the right or wrong in which you are... I think I went too far. As a remedy for carelessness, train the attitude such as mindfulness, which does not forget which ends to adopt and which to cast aside. Vigilance, which immediately examines the 3 doors of body, speech, and mind, and understands the right or wrong in which you are engaged. Shame, so shame is in relation to one's self. So this is one's personal kind of, I don't want to say embarrassment because that's the next word, but one's own personal bad feeling because of what I'm about to read, which shuns faults committed with respect to oneself or the teaching. So shame is in relation to how you feel about yourself and what you've done. So if you know what your vows are and you break them, then this feeling of shame occurs. Embarrassment, which shuns wrongdoing and thinks others will criticize me. Here, embarrassment is about what others will think about you. Shame is about what you think of yourself, and then embarrassment is worrying about what others will think of you for doing these things. So, Digsum.
다 마구바 동안주 고 마구비 예분들인도와 네 사제당 대제발로도 마구비 예분들에 돈바당 샤자도바당 제바스 다 사제기 제발로서 말바 제바당 상바 좀바 쉬어봐 나라 고바 샤오스 돈바당 제바당 상바 좀바 쉬어봐 나라 고바 제바이나 안에 마구바도 내는 말바 타바 드마에 신의 드네지로는 어떤 강가 크고 오다 마구비냐 보는 점바다 뒤 제바다 참바 총벌 쇼바스 추루즈 말베 추루 담마 브랜드
Leso.
쇼바나라 코버샤오스 점바다 뒤 제바다 안에 참바 총벌 쇼바나라 코바 제바이나 마구발 엔티다트 야
Leso.
what about ro
which shuns wrongdoing and thinks others will criticize me, and trepidation, which fears the future karmic fruition of wrongdoing. So here trepidation is a fear of what will happen as a result in the future because of these misdeeds. As a remedy for disrespect, have respect for the teacher. So one analyzes what the teacher here is capitalized because this refers to Buddha Shakyamuni. So think of all of the teacher's teachings and so forth, his rules. These are the ethical behaviors set forth by Lord Buddha and your fellow practitioners. So here this refers to Dharma friends. So one begins to the magupi the nyepo gare.
마구비 예부도데 사제도 뒤 제바도 삼바소 담아 편에도 줄 거바 제바이나 마구발는 그러다
Then gupa kandrezu. Kandre용.
그거서나 저는 수수 그게다 사제를 가서 가부지네
Salongare.
그뒤지로
The yunten.
연대로
Oh, okay. So I was just asking Rinpoche, and how do you gain this respect for the teacher, his roles, and your fellow practitioners, in case I missed it? And Rinpoche stated, by looking at the excellent qualities of these basises, and analyzing these basises, excellent qualities, and then becoming familiar, and this becomes a remedy for that disrespect, because one will then start to respect these bases of the Buddha, the pronouncement, the Buddha, the ethical disciplines he put forth, and one's fellow Dharma friends.
다 녀모모 동안주고 녀모모 이내분들에서 줄었다데 네 수수 생주를 산다네
Leso.
네 도차 시초와 이나 때문 시초와 이나 콘도 시초와 거래여봐 이나 도차 시초와 이나 모두 보고야
Leso.
콘도 시초와 이나 잠보고야
Leso.
때문 시초와 이나 땡대고야 어떤 제수를 다
Leso.
줄었다데 녀모 강시초와 쳐와라 냐보 베네 때노서 어떻게
Leso. Now it says, as a remedy for various afflictions, examine your mind and energetically apply the remedies for whatever afflictions predominate. So there are many afflictions, so one has to look at oneself and see which afflictions are the worst, which are the most glaring, what predominates, and then apply an antidote to that specific affliction. All the afflictions have their remedies, have their antidotes. So for instance, when we look at attachment, if the attachment is predominant, then we apply its antidote, which is meditation on impurity or the ugliness, and then in parentheses of the body or whatever one's attached to. It's impurity. So the second is if we were, for instance, to have a real problem with anger, then meditation upon love becomes the antidote to anger. If we have a bigger problem with ignorance, then meditation upon dependent origination becomes the antidote to this ignorance. So each of the afflictions has their individual antidotes, separate antidotes, and everyone is different. in terms of which ones are predominate. Digson.
What about the lower there? Chetal Chutula and the jig on a
So in terms of the 8 categories that Jayan Sheba will present, this is the first category.
Gigi, Taniba Denamare, Niba Dene, what the Niba Chamalayan, Bayans Shonsula Jawan, Shonsula Jawan. Taniba Denamate, Tanbeba, and the Tanle. Nengaya Chung Yando Sane Jeba Nala Bayanso Juba ne Dungen Baji to the Sa Tan the Swaji Jeba Chuchung Re and then what the Susuna Shita Gubas Kayo Jumare Masuna Digre Nabe Bayan Jeba in a Yaba Chubres the Tambeba the Tanle Gayans 사실 제바던 게야 제바 춘중래 예바 춘중래 향도 산에 제바나라 바양수 주바네 동행 바지 도도 동행 용거래서다 동행 바지 도데 안에 수송군에서 조된지 론나지를 송도레스 론나지래 가지 덤바 토지지 템발라 네 영화 sensin 중세 다시바 테네 텔레동에 자와토스 네 호세 메세 제베 아민 체냐진 호세 제베 아민 체냐진 들라 라레 자비 체체야 데나 랭가 체바 토문조로 토비 가노 추지 취민대 주나 돈으로지 얼리 달러진 셰송바타로스 셰송바타로 니바들 뜻으로도 다드네 어때 다동아 수가 동아 추중래 또 게다 준 요즘 말해서 내가 이나 어디 내가 용으레스 대담만배 반도 장래 게양 네 내가 추중래 춘중원하도 산에 제바나라 바양수 조반에 서데 제바 추중도 마송바지 바양수 조반에 동행 바지 도데스 동행 용그레스 네 론나지 로송도스 론나지 론데지가 나 론나지 가지 덤바 토지진지 템발라 네 영화 세지 중생 다시바 데네 델레 동행 제와토 동행 해보 용그레스 네 메세 제베 아미 전화신 메세 제베서 어떤 메세스야데 나오러지가 나오러지가 제반을 체제달 되도 어떤 얼터서자 메세스야데 자신라그스 자신은 칼라사야기 신신들지 러그레스 자세스나 자와스는 칼라사와 자와 자신라 메세 러그레스 자신 탈레 아니 용세 요바이나 어드제바이나 자신도 가능그레스
The Kali la. Ganyasan this Sopu Yomari NGK. Okay, the Zashin. The Tsawa, the Tsagishin. Shin Tsa.
Mese Jebi, Mese Sadua. And Mese Jeshin. And Mese Jebi, Amise.
The
Amise Zashin. Kalasa Shinam
Jiris. The
They tell in Amuta.
The NGK the
I'm a pearly now with the Zashin Lagoro. Andung Talishin Jeba in Andung Janoga. What the Sonja?
Then it did Donda?
Donda,
the Zashin.
Jebi, Amis, and the Kalasa Shinjis. And then Oroji in the Valtedo Tuda.
Okay.
Change it and do. And Amis at the Zashin Lagres, T. Tale, don't see the Baba, you know what in your Congress, Senya Jeans, and then Lali Jabi Chechen Yans. Gansunji then Jabu Chiba Yimba Yina Sansan de Chiba Kamuguba regular was Chechen Yang. The Lala Chiba Tominjuros. To be Kalun Chubin de Jena. Donojo Alindologins. Twanji Kale or the Payanjine Kalindeba on what the Tonul Chigres Alindologins, Alindojo, Low Alindolosia de the Jut Desavomar. Tanghama Gunja in a Karina Gunadle, Shinji Rosin, Koyaman, Yungo the Shin Daguzuta. Dadu Daku, then the Sanji Karsagos, that Shinji Mujusan, and Colon on the Shindaba in Zero. Shindaba, what the angel with the Lulichin and Longole, Shinu Yokinjil Chibarabres, Pajin or Tayungaris from the inside.
So now we get into the second category, those who fail to make an effort in this way, who follow the rules in a lax fashion, thinking that even though they have transgressed, it is merely a small fault, will gain only suffering. For as the exegesis of discipline says, those who take lightly and slightly transgress the teaching of the compassionate teacher, thereby come under the power of suffering. Just as one who cuts a grove of small bamboo and spoils a whole grove of mango, here those who transgress the king's pronouncements would not be punished for a few such transgressions, but were they to transgress improperly the edicts of the sage, they would become animals, as did the Naga Elapatra. Here, this is saying that even if one engages in a small amount of non-virtue or just does a small misdeed, one shouldn't think, oh, I've only done something little. This is no big deal. It's just something small. It's literally like thinking this is not a big deal. This isn't something very serious. It's only a small fault. But the fact is that this small non-virtue will cause a great deal of suffering in the future. So one shouldn't think that it's small because of what its result will be. And it says those who take lightly and slightly transgress the teaching of the compassionate teacher thereby come under the power of suffering. So even a light transgression, even just the smallest amount of misdeed that you do causes a great amount of suffering. And it goes on to say that if you were in a kingdom and there were certain laws put down and you were to transgress a couple in a very, very slight fashion, where in that case there's a chance that you wouldn't get in trouble, that the king, you wouldn't be punished. There isn't certainty that you would be punished. Whereas in the case of karma, in the case of misdeeds, you will most certainly have a result of suffering. And Nawan Rapje addresses this small bamboo and spoils a whole grove of mango. And Rinpoche is saying that here it's a grove of trees. In the Tibetan, I guess it says trees that can be eaten, like it's a tree that can be eaten. So then the dondagarre, the sheen, the jawa garre, the jawa garre, the dugyal dan, the sheen, the jawa garre, the dondagarre. Let me find it again. It's so not important, maybe. Chishene keo mare.
Nyaba chama ya bayanso. Shamron chune. Konjun jawase.
Amitsa nyam shin.
Teza membe bande zang. Ne meze de amitse nya jins amitse nya. Amitse za de saag shinji saag shin.
This will do.
Amitse gan saag shinji lore saag shinji logres.
Lesso.
Noro jige chen de do do.
Lesso.
Chenya jins. Ti thale nonse baba ina amitse saag shin kan do gojero ta.
Okay.
What son reseta.
So Rinpoche is saying that this should read like if you were in a kingdom and just cut a little bit of this tree, a food tree. Just cut a little tiny bit of it. The spoils, I can't seem to get the spoils part clear, and it doesn't seem to come through in the commentary, and in the Tibetan, it doesn't seem to come through. So, but I just might be missing something. But Rinpoche's commentary isn't. It's just basically saying that if you cut a small amount of this food tree, then which is against the law, you might not get in trouble. It might be some, if you took a small amount of this, you might not get in trouble. Whereas if you did a small misdeed, you most certainly will experience the great amount of suffering. So that's the meaning behind this. And then it says they would become animals, as did Alapatra. Here, this is a story of Alapatra, who was a meditator, and every day he got up, there was a tree in his way, and he would hit his head on the tree, and he became very impatient with this and cut the tree down, and thinking that this was a small misdeed, went about his business and engaged in meditation, and as a result, he was reborn as a Naga with a tree growing out of his head. So we see how small misdeeds results can be great amount of suffering. So we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Oh, yeah. The Kanga Sumba? Yeah, Sumba de Rimdua.
Okay. And now we get into number 3, which deals with if you have engaged in non-virtue, what to do about it. Therefore, strive not to be polluted by faults and infractions. However, if you should become polluted by these, do not heedlessly ignore such sins. and infractions, but strive to redress them in accordance with the Buddhist teachings, as in the sutra requested by Brahma says, rely upon the trainings, undertake them earnestly from the heart, do not give them up later, or break them even to save your life. Always maintain them diligently and engage in the discipline. So when we look at the various disciplines, we can categorize them by vows or misdeeds, broken vows or misdeeds. In terms of vows or commitments, they have their individual ceremonies in order to restore them, in order to fix what has been broken. Fix what has been broken. So in terms of the individual liberation vows for the monks and nuns, there is the sojung. And for the bodhisattva vows, there is the bodhisattva's transgression of downfalls. For the tantric vows, there is a tantric ceremony to restore one's vows. And in terms of regular misdeeds, application of the four opponent powers and the other practices such as those become the antidote to that type of non-virtue. So all non-virtues have their specific opponents, and if they are just general, then there are the general purification of misdeed. There's a general purification of misdeeds, but if there's specifically bodhisattva vow, tantric vows, or ordained vows of the ordained, then they require specific antidotes, which are specific ceremonies. Moreover, as the Buddha decreed in the sutra on having pure ethical discipline, the Sili Samyutta Sutra, using reasons you should keep your ethical discipline even at the risk of your life. So one uses reasons, becomes familiar with ethical discipline and its excellent qualities and the need for it, and then once one is familiar with it and truly understands it, then one will not give it up even if it cost his or her life. It says, "O monks, to lose your life and die is excellent, but to ruin and lose your ethical discipline is not." So remember, this is supposed to read like, if you have ethical discipline and lose your life and die, then this is okay. It's excellent. We can use the word excellent. To die while one has been ethical is excellent, but it says, why? Losing your life and dying depends only on the lifespan of this rebirth. But if you ruin and lose your ethical discipline, you will experience a great downfall, separating from your lineage and giving up happiness over 10 million lifetimes. You should think, if this need to keep my ethical discipline is at all costs were not the case, then shaving off my hair and donning monastic robes was pointless. Then we get a quote from the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, the King of Concentration Sutra. The Tingenzi do lap go injike. Lap? Okay.
Tanda katul tandua glung pai dole Sudan Tejan Shewan Lai, Tudin Yanshibin Tata Maino, Teji Shershenas, Jusen Carres, Sudan Tejan Shewine, and Joan Denis Seseba Juches, Seseba Zanramatukayo Mares, Tudin Yanshibine, Joa Mota Jaibado, Ritan Teshin, Doa Ponte, Nabaton Chaminyasu Yon Juro, Tensi da jede katsaba taras, tensi da jede katsaba taras. Chudin yanshi shibe ne, jo muta jayba do ritan tashin, doa bonde naba tunga chaba nyasu nyuwa juros. Chudin suna penyo chibir ma suna wate, jo muta jayba do ritan tashin sedu mei risa wenro. Ritan tashin, naba tunga chaba nyasu nyuwa juros. Tensi da jete katsawa taras, tensi tangda saga marbe, tangda do tikan tebe tangda do kursana, chuti nyabi matu chujen, ne jiwa mota jayiba do ritan tashin, doa ponte naba tunga chambo, nyansu nyuwan jotes, ruji chuje, chuti nyabi kansa himbe shir. Tatu Kuguma Tensi, Tensi Tanda Seguro, Jeremici de Tanda, Tendusa, Tanda. Chuti Nyabe, ne Matchus and Diro, Chuti Matchus, ne Joe Mota Jayba, the Ritan Teshin, the Abbot, the number 2 Champions on Jute, Chuti Nyabikanza in Beaches. With the Tatu Kusamara. Tatala Raji Tanda, the Tatu Mami Tanda, soon on the Karinsana, the Vici Raji Tanda in Samarabata. Jusu Palendejo, Jusu Bakayama, Tajela Matushi, Ten Raji, but Jews.
Rajin, Juje, Dan Sumbagare?
Raji Tanda, Jeta. Jebi Tanda, Mami Tanda.
Mami, okay.
Mami Tanda, Sun Yoro. Tanda in a Sun to you, Gata the Trudani, Mamishia. Sun Shiba in the Raji Tanda, Mami Tanda, Jetandas.
Observationless, okay. Okay. So we can utilize, when we go back to the sutra on having pure ethical discipline, where we find this address to the fully ordained monks being given. It says, why the Chuchen Yanjar Surnang Temchik.
Chuchen Yabi Matchus, Chuchen Yam Matchus, Joe Mota Jayba, the Ritan Teshin, the Wapon, the number 2 Yanson on Jutis, Anga Danjas and Jurors, Baby still Mamba, Mamba, Shugul Tayungres, Ritan Teshin, the Wapon, the number 2 Yanson on Jutis, the Chuchen Kaza in Base. Chutin Yabi Kaza in Base.
The Chuchen down the Dai and Da Chipa.
Chipa Maro, the Kakarot. Chutin Yabi Matchus, Shadabarwa. Chutin Yabi Matchus, Joe Mota Jaybato, Ritan Teshin, the Abon, the number 2 Yanson on Jute. Chutin Yabi Kaza in Base.
The Chuchen down Da and Da Chipa.
Chutin Yabi Matchus, Chutin Yabi Kaza Kakarot.
Oh, okay. Me Kansak. Okay. Drabbled. Okay. So we could say that a human who has given up his or her vows separates from their lineage and gives up happiness over 10 million lifetimes because they are a person who has given up their ethical discipline. And then we can say that a person who has a human who has engaged in ethical discipline, the subject, a person who has engaged in ethical discipline, does not separate from their lineage and has happiness over 10 million lifetimes because he or she is a person which has held on to ethical discipline. So a human who has engaged in ethics won't be separated from lineage and will have happiness over 10 million years because they're a person who has held ethical discipline. A human who has abandoned ethical discipline will be separated from lineage and experience suffering over 10 million lifetimes because they're a person who has abandoned their ethics. So this is how we would look at it in terms of Chuchen Sawadak, in terms of the subject, thesis, correct sign.
So
those who study science, we utilize these sorts of correct signs in order to prove their thesis. Using correct signs is the best because then it allows you to really think about why.
Tensi da jite kache de tensi tangda ro tangda ta le na tangda ta na ni no ne tangda sung wo ro ta tensi da jite kache wa tar su da du du sung wa sha wo sa ta da mai na da ta de shin ne ku mo mi go ba de me do nya de samba sha de ne o de ta te tolu ngami ko ba tanda yo mare sang tang waras Tenenzi Jabules, Sanji Temba de la Rosune, Dibile Shinto, Shubashi, Sanji Temba de la Rosune, Diba Momusane, Dibi Lena, Shinto, Shubashi, Northern Drula, Hibu Dushi, and Nel Gabuji, no, Northern Dro, no, Sana, Masu. Keman the Seguna, Kewata to Tula, not on Drula, Drus Rise la Sobaturo, Hibu de Jejin, Jean Dan, Jeba, and Tatan, Jetan, Palan to Zero. Pelan, so Tato Bipomendoa, Pelan, Shinda no la cha, Shinda no la cha. Can't Hubby Nen, Hubby Neten. Member now, the dog is a Jishu test, and then Tabajin or the Habamasuna or the Tashikun and Chuyo Maris. She some be sure also what about to somebody?
You should think if this need to keep my ethical discipline at all costs were not the case, then shaving off my hair and donning monastic robes was pointless. For as the King of Concentration Sutra says, after you have renounced the world and gone forth into the Buddhist teachings, you engage in sinful actions. And attached to mounts, oxen, and chariots, have the idea that wealth and grain are essential. Why did you make no effort to train in anything, bother to shave your heads? So here it's speaking to those who are ordained, who have gone forth, yet still engage in non-virtuous actions and break their vows, and becoming attached to mounts, to the saddles and so forth, becoming attached to one's oxen and cattle and cows, becoming attached to one's chariot, becoming attached to the idea that one has to have wealth for happiness. One has to have these wonderful grains and food for happiness. Seeing these as essentials in order to be satisfied. It says, if you have these ideas, why did you make no effort to train in any? Why did you, who make no effort to train in anything, bother to shave your heads? So, what was the point of becoming ordained, shaving your heads and putting on robes, if you have this relationship with things such as mounts, oxen, chariots, and wealth and grain and food and so forth? Think so.
Da jiba wa tsuti ma sona kwal chuk mares wa denne songu dose ta jiba tsuti ma sona kwal medro anes duji kwal le roban de ne tabi tonche do ro ala tsuti yi kamba nya na ne rumene ba mazes ne kwal hayang khorshin dongen na ji Dumba Patan Jete, Tengenzi Jabules, Meshi Chungu Mampu, Razine, Choan Debe, Drushin, Rutena, Ti Kamba, Drushin, Jumanu, Chungu Taki, Tumbatar, Tejin Tutin. Chudi nyabi mobi me, ne duji tale, drowan de meje, kwal drowan de meje, chudi nyabi, tenyan drumenu, naga chewa tagi, shindu jung, she son so, taba de jiba tenma, takante, Chudi Masuna Kual Jumar, Tetang Luzun, Jajibe, Chudi Masuna Kual Pontu Maris, Tetang Luz, Duji Kual Le, Drubandene, Duji Kual Drubandene, Tabi Troncheto Drualas, Duji Kual Drubandene, Tabi Troncheto Druala, Chudi Kamba de Manan Rutu Maris, Chudi Kamba Yana Rumuniba Mazes, Suji Kama Taban Rutu Mare, Sanji tu Mares, Manuba Maze, Koa La Question, Lion Koa Quotigres, Dungeji, Jumba Putanche de Sundu, Susundusana, Sanji Junden de Dingan Jabule. Dingan Jabule, Meshi Chuku Mobu, Razine, Meshine, Chunku Mombako, Kulnova Jene, Razine, Chuan Debe, Tuition, Rotenas, Chuan Debe, that Komatsu Mesale, Beag San Lubaina, Beag San Luba, Kokamaman, Rutu Marwa. Chuan Debe, Druishin is a Truba, Roa, and Rotena. The combat dressing, Germany, combat mason, combat Jutu Marota, Rutu Mares, Chungun Taki, the Jugres, the June, Jumba Terror, example, the Jin Tutin Yaba, Mobi Man, Dujitale, Joe and Demechi, Tutin Yabe, Tele. Ne drutu kwal drutu mare drumenu naga chawa nai dunge gai dunge che chi dunge dagi shindu jong she song so sitaba de jibare shida kal kabundo kalila
they love it.
Yeah.
Then Kabaka henderson
she song so sitaba de tenan dole so den ngabali ngore.
Okay. All right, so now we move on to number 4. You who seek to escape from cyclic existence, the composite, and to reach the city of liberation will not succeed if the feet of your ethical discipline are unsteady. Not only that, you will return again to cyclic existence and be destroyed by suffering. The Buddha spoke of this with an example in the King of Concentration Sutra. When a man was attacked by a gang of robbers, he tried to escape because he wished to live. But when he set out, his feet could not move or run, and so the robbers caught and subdued him. Likewise, a confused person whose ethical discipline is impaired, though wanting to escape from the composite, cannot escape because of impaired ethical discipline, and is destroyed by illness, old age, and death. Therefore, as the sutra says, I set forth trainings for householders wearing secular clothing. At that time, these monks did not have even these trainings. The Buddha says that in these times, when even monks do not completely maintain the 5 fundamental trainings he taught to lay practitioners, effort in the trainings has an even greater fruit. Therefore, you should strive to maintain the trainings. And I'm not sure if that paragraph is included in number 4 or not. I'll let you know in 1 minute. Khensur Rinpoche.
Oda ngaba tene ma ode abudo ngaba tindu tene ngasu tarin dusu ane tensang dusu chudin songo ine shida phen chobres phen chobu imba songo dusu ta phen chobu imba de ngaba tindu sona phen chuzunes tindu ne chudin songo ina phen chobu yores phen chobu yoba de tenga dusu ta tena do tele dingen ji job injirwa do tele chimba jayu kujin la ngan sheba kan sheba laba kan sheba tse galon tala ne laba ta meban joro she son batar ginye la son be labi jinga yonsu zuba son galon la ya meba son be tunder laba la jamba ne laba yang rebuchi beba shades ta den wo del keçim do de yabushi do a tinsan de sujin song ina pen shi shades sanji shenju de so sujin na ba da ba song ba da tinsan de sujin ha ji song ba pen chigres sanji shenju de sujin na ba da ba song ga da tinsan de ba ma nya bi de so sujin ha ji song ba de pen de le chigres wo de na ba de den do se ta de nan do de le Chenpa Chayu Kujen Gnyero Gnye. Chenpa Chayu Kujen la ngene sheba laba kan sheba genye ga laja nga ta marbe kan sheba tese gelon ta la laba te meba jos gelon laba so phaja ne genye ga laba nga te gelon chu so ya so mo tu gi te tabule na laba so tu na phen chebres jo she so ba tar genye la son bi labi jenga Nonso zoba sonwa, gelon la ya meba sonbi, tuindere, laba la tsomba nes, genye gilhaja tuze son mutubi, gelon tsuge, son mutubi tuche tetabule, laba ya, jebi chi, ne chudin haji sonda jebi chibures, jebi chi mbeba shates, ne chudin kanto judo songwares, ndo teni le dinga di jabin jirwa ndo teni le keba shiwa kangi shenye to tayu senji se tang kuna tang do tang paden mami tiwa yi sanji shiwa tati rindu shi kangi tang chu rato jiba tang Deshi tenba ngaba chubitse, nisen tone laba ji shweba, sonan dene teyu shirabha, shesung bishiro, so te ngaba terendo, so te kechemundo kaleju, hen shebo yosumundo, tesanga tu sol, chudin suna, hen shebo resita, chudin sanji shenjo kutu, chudin naba taba somba tang, tesan tenba ma nyabu tuyo, chudin haji somba tu hen shebo res, tenga du sumre.
So this next section is actually very important because this is really specific to these times that we're in right now. So number 5, we actually back up a little tiny bit. That's what I was saying before. We actually back up to, therefore, as this sutra says, I set forth trainings. So this is going to be all category number 5. And this same sutra is referring to the King of Concentration Sutra. So it says, I set forth trainings for householders wearing secular clothing. At that time, these monks did not have even these trainings. So here, this is speaking of the 5 householder vows and stating that during these times, even fully ordained practitioners were not able to keep the 5 main trainings. So if you are able to during this time, it's of great benefit. So this is an important section because we're in this time right now. So if we're able to keep those 5 vows, it's of great benefit. And it says, the Buddha says that in these times, even monks do not completely maintain the 5 fundamental trainings he taught to lay practitioners, effort in the trainings has an even greater fruit. Therefore, you should strive to maintain the trainings. The same sutra says, for 10 million eons, as many as there are sands in the Ganges, I served with a pure mind food, drink, umbrellas, banners, processions of lamps to 10 quadrillion Buddhas. So much greater is the merit of whoever practices a single training night and day at the time when the sublime teaching is perishing and the Sagata's teaching is coming to an end. So during these degenerate times when the teachings are coming to an end, and leaving this world, just keeping those 5 vows that the Buddha set forth to householders is of great benefit.
So
it's important for us to understand this because this is really referring to these days, to now, and we need to know this about it. So Rinpoche has 3 or 4 times emphasized the importance of this specific section in a way that hasn't emphasized that much throughout the teaching. So this number 5 is very important because during these times it's very rare to be able to practice and hold disciplines.
So during
these times, one who can even hold on to without letting go of those 5 vows is said to be benefited much more in a greater way than during non-degenerate times or times when things are in the increase. Things are in the decrease phase now.
That robot and my Jen, Tonga said, and what the local chibi is a local chimbo, what the Jen, Tonga Shoya, Shabby, Chuchanes, Tonga Yuna Gay, my shadows in the degrees, Shabby Chuchane, Shinchi Mejibi, Don't say Maba, Jubanes, Shinchi Mejibi, Don't say Maba J. Ne shejebe chusene tu sa jibares ne shamba singi da indoles shamba shimi tu ngaja ba tamala shachu samba china neba da shachu samba china neba shachu samba chimba china neba da rajun kaji ne tada the gates, the logan does ta. Dibi lene, never shabby, Maluban Zebanjuro, she sessions. Deba Gazi Chabina Tatures, session. Tada Deba Noban Dusheba, Noban Dushene, Shaba Shawo she. Tuan Haban Jimba Shejin, Shedumban Zimbane. Majeba ta Juan Jute, Tedane, and a chi legeno she Namades, Joden de go to Tungash, she legeno she Namade, Chiwayan, Kanshin and Data de, Pana, Tusa Matatan Dawa, example, Chi Dushene, and Lobatonwa. Naso, Ruan Joainos, Niwata da Tunul Chenrezig, Shedan, Desmongdua, Shamba Papi Chundua, and the La Tuji Shawan, Data de Labi Jetajiba, Tale, Dawashiba Yimbe, Chijaki, Tusa Majao, she. What about the Juba?
That's so now we move on to number 6. Furthermore, you might think that even were you to incur an infraction, you could confess it afterwards. However, in this case, you lack an attitude of restraint that prevents you from committing the action again. So engaging in this infraction is like eating poison and telling yourself that you could always take the antidote later. For as the lion's roar of Maitreya Sutra, the Maitreya Maha Simhanada Sutra says, Maitreya in the future, in the final 500-year period of the teaching, certain renunciates and householder bodhisattvas will claim that sinful karma is completely extinguished through confessing the fault. They will disclose the infraction, saying, after we have become involved in sin, we will confess it, but they will not restrain themselves from doing it again. I tell you that they possess fatal karma. What do I mean by fatal? For example, it is like people who ingest poison. They create their time of death and then end up in a misguided descent into a miserable realm. And also, Maitreya, what I call poison in the noble teaching of the disciplined, is transgressed in... One more time. Maitreya, what I call poison in the noble teaching of the discipline is transgressing the fundamental trainings as I have prescribed them. Therefore, do not eat such poison. So here, non-virtue is being compared to poison, because one knows what doing it will result in. Likewise, one knows what taking poison will result in, one dying. And then it gives the analogy of someone who has committed suicide, but then now is just headed to a more miserable circumstance as a result of it. Digsung Rinpoche.
Oh, yeah, that
6.
That
Number 7 now?
Jig non that
Of the 8.
Dumba de Sajikashi Dota. Dumbale. Dumbal Pechi Saji, but Saji.
So the Rinpoche is saying he thinks there's 4 categories in number 7, which is the one we're at now. That's the karma junire.
What dog Pechi Jagan? And the Shu Kaleshi.
Rinpoche said maybe let's end here, and we'll get into that next week. Because everyone listened very well. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We got that.
Okay, so concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you again, everybody, for making this possible. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious jeweler. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samatapapa as well. Whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the five great philosophical texts, exceptional wisdom and perseverance, who Rinpoche Guti Shapi Denralung